This is Dr. Matt Barber of Alabama Orthopedic Clinic. We are proud supporters of Ransom Reprogram, Ransom Ministries, and all of the good work that they do in our community. If you would like to learn more about us, check us out at alortho.com or barbertotaljoint.com. You can also hear more from me personally on the Ortho Real podcast. Thank you again for allowing us to be involved with Ransom Ministries and all of the great work that they do.
Do you know someone who's struggling? Someone who continues to make the wrong decisions? Could that someone be you? Have you had a problem in the past of making decisions that afterwards you were just like, why did I do that? Have you ever wanted to get help and didn't really know how? Have you ever wanted to help someone in that situation and really not understood how to do it? Did you ever ask yourself, why do I keep making these decisions? Or why do they keep making those decisions? We're going to take some time to explore and see this world through eyes we've never looked through and shoes we've never walked in. These are the sons and daughters made in His image with the potential to positively impact our community. This is raw, this is real, and this is Ransom.
With every star, we are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head.
This show is brought to you by Ransom Recycling, your number one choice for electronic recycling in Mobile, Alabama. Help reduce waste in our landfills by recycling all of your unwanted, unused, and non-working electronics. Ransom Recycling is a division of Ransom Ministries that is helping to put men and women back to work. Check out ransomministries.com for a complete list of acceptable items. Drop-offs and pickups can be easily scheduled through the website. Please note that we are not accepting TVs at this time. Ransom Recycling, open 8 to 3 Monday through Friday. Help our planet while helping men and women re-enter the workforce.
With every star, we are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head.
Hey, welcome to the Ransom Experience. We talk with people that have been through our program, people that volunteer with us, and today I'm joined from a young man named Ethan Buckaloo. He's from Wool Market, Mississippi. He's 19 years old. He's one of the most loving and trustworthy kids I've met in a long time. Welcome to the show, Ethan.
It's nice to be here, Matt.
All right, so we met through Ransom Recycling. You came on here because of a friend of mine that I've met through different people that has a transition house here in Chickasaw.
Yeah.
Which a transition house, for those of you that don't know, is a place transitioning from either addiction or jail or homelessness into a life where they can be self-sustaining.
Yes.
So we met Ethan, and then they asked if he could be part of our program, and I'll be honest, I never had anyone this young in our program. He's 19 years old. He's he's just he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a very compassionate and gets his feelings hurt, but you know what? Sometimes that's good. So, Ethan, I just want you to kind of tell me about Ethan the kid. What was life like for Ethan the kid?
Well, I wasn't always as sensitive. When I was really young, life wasn't that hard for us. We moved around a lot, but just seeing things from the perspective of a child, it didn't really look like anything bad was going on. But like looking back now, I know my parents were both in addiction. My mom, my stepdad. My biological father left when I was really young. Most of my grandparents, they all took care of us mostly, and it was a good childhood. We got a lot of like good stuff out of it, like family and everything. But as I got older, it became problematic because there were people in and out of the house all the time. There was violence because my parents were in addiction and they started fighting a lot. It was pretty difficult getting into the like 8 or 9 year old stage. I missed a lot of school growing up. I didn't really like school at all, so I would fake out like I was sick a lot and try to go home. I was bad in school. I didn't listen to my teachers. I didn't really pay attention to anything. They tried to put me in a special class because I didn't make good on any of my grades, but it was just because I didn't pay attention. I mean, I'm not dumb. I'm a little bit intelligent for someone from Mississippi, but the teachers didn't really like me. Principals always had problems with me. We had officers that were in our school all the time. They were the only ones that actually seemed like they like I had potential. They saw it in me.
Yeah.
Because they deal with people like that all the time. Teachers, they want people to pay attention, and I just didn't do that. But all in all, my childhood wasn't horrible, but it wasn't the best either.
So you told me a story one time. We were sitting in circle time, and you said something about your sister breaking eggs everywhere.
Yeah.
Can you tell us that story?
I was about 10 years old, and my stepdad worked really late. He had this job like all the way in Pascagoula, and if you're from Biloxi, you know that Pascagoula is about an hour and a half away. It's really close to Mobile. And so he would catch rides back and forth to work, but he'd usually just stay over there because it was really long. And my mom was gone that day, and my older sister, she's younger than me, but she's older than my youngest sister, she was across the street at a friend's house. So I was taking care of my baby sister. She was about 2 years old at the time, and I laid her down to sleep, and I went to sleep, and about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard a loud noise coming from the kitchen, and I knew I was the only one home besides Evelyn, my youngest sister, and I went in there, and she was smashing eggs all over her. It was like a 48-pack of eggs, and she was throwing them all under the refrigerator, all under the oven, just in her hair, eating them. It was just bad. She was putting them in her diaper. It was just bad. So I had to wash her in the sink, and finally my mom came home, and she helped me out. She wasn't very good at helping me because, she was pretty messed up, but it was stuff like that a lot. And that was when I started getting into my early teenage years, like 10 and 11. That's when I became the man of the house because there wasn't really anyone around, and I just had to take care of my sisters. And that's when it started getting hard because, you got a lot of people telling you you're growing up too fast. You need to just be a kid. And it's hard to be a kid whenever you kind of are forced to grow up because you have to take care of 2 other children. So I was missing school a lot then. I failed 6th grade. I got held back. I repeated 6th grade. I got bullied a lot for it. I started, that's when the authority thing came in, where I started not listening to anyone because I was doing everything on my own for so long. Why should I listen to somebody when they're telling me to do something that I already know how to do? So that was a complex I created when it was just people trying to tell me what to do, and I wouldn't listen to them.
Yeah. So you grew up in a home where your mom was an addiction, your stepfather was an addiction.
Yeah.
That's a tough thing. And then you're having to raise your sisters who are younger than you. You missed a lot of school because you had to take care of them, but also because you didn't like school. So it was kind of good for both sides.
Yeah.
So as you got older then, what happened then? Because you couldn't keep that up. That's hard to keep up as a kid, Yeah. So as you got in your high school years, kind of where'd you go from there?
High school years. So at about midway through 8th grade, I had gotten into an engagement with my stepdad. He was upset because I wanted to cook the girls' dinner because he was usually gone. And this time he had been home, but he was sleeping. He had been sleeping all day. And I came home from school. I wanted to fix them dinner. I asked him if I could take something out, And he was like, no, don't take anything out. I'll get up in a minute and I'll cook. Well, I go outside. I'm hanging out with my friends and come back about an hour later. And my sisters are saying they're still hungry. So I was like, all right, I'm taking food out. And he doesn't like that. So he slams the door and tells me to get out. So I got frustrated and I went across the street and I asked our neighbor if she would cook some food for us real quick, and I'll give them whatever back that they used, and I'll just bring it in through the back door, feed my sisters, and my dad will never know, or my stepdad will never know because he's sleeping. Well, he found out that I went across the street because they called him to see like what was going on because they were friends, and we got in a fist fight, and I was like probably 12 years old. Yeah, I was about 12 years old. We got in a fist fight. He had tried to choke me, and he had put a big old bruise on my face where he slapped me. Well, whenever I went into my room, I slammed the door and I locked it, and I grabbed a pocket knife that my uncle gave me. I didn't open it, but I held it in my hand, and I opened the door, and he was screaming at my sisters at this point. I opened the door, and I got in his face, and I was like, if you ever put your hands on me or my sisters again, I'll use this. And he snatched it out of my hand, he threw it out the door, and he pushed me in my room, closed the door. Well, I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and went straight to school. And I went and on the bus ride there, Miss Terry, she was my bus driver. She actually was calling people as I was pulling up to school. There were police officers waiting there. Well, I talked to them and told them what was going on, and they said I had obedient problems. I was disobedient, and he had the right to put his hands on me because I pulled a knife. But I explained to them that I didn't do that until he had already put his hands on me. Well, they sent a caseworker from Child Protective Services to our house. They had a talk. He basically just said that I was disobedient, and they said nothing else about that for a couple years. And so after 8th grade, 9th grade came, and that's whenever the fighting between my mom and my stepdad came really bad. Like, he was hurting her. It wasn't just like pushing her down anymore. It was like close to killing her sometimes. She would overdose, and he would kick her while she was having seizures and stuff. Like, he'd tell her to get up, that she's just acting like that, and it just became really bad. So she decided she was going to go to rehab, and when she did, he left. And I went to go stay with my mom's mom, my grandma, and my grandma's husband, my step-grandpa. Me and the girls went and stayed there for a summer, and Mom got out of rehab, and she had met this guy in rehab named Anthony. I didn't like that guy from the jump, but there was a lot of problems because he knew my stepdad, and he was in cahoots with her. They had this gang violence, just all kinds of different things that was going on in 9th grade year. It was very scary. By the end of 9th grade year, my mom went back to rehab, got rid of her old boyfriend, and that rehab didn't work. She stayed for about 20-something days. She got kicked out because she was trying to use someone's phone, and that's where the really deep addiction started. She started using needles even more. She started using meth rather than heroin, mixing them. It was about 10th grade year, and I hadn't seen her in 8 or 9 months. And that's where the custody battle started. We had a DHS worker. She got my mom to sign over her parental rights. She got my father to sign over the parental rights, and then my grandma adopted us. And that's where I started getting in a lot more arguments with my grandma and stuff because I didn't like the idea of her being our mother because she used that against us. She was very mean to my little sister because she was really young, and my grandma didn't want to have to raise us, but that was just something that happened. So she was frustrated with that, and there was a lot of problems. But once the end of 10th grade started coming, when I was moving on to junior year, my life started changing for the better. I learned about God. I started going to church. I went on youth retreats. I had already been on some, but I didn't really know anything about God. I was just going to have fun. But I started talking about God. I started telling my friends about him. And one day, me and my grandma, I said I was sick, got sent home from school, and we went to run some errands. And we went to Waffle House for breakfast. Well, we didn't live on the beach. We lived in the country part of Biloxi, in a little town called Woolmarket. It's about 30 minutes from the beach. But for some reason, she wanted to go over to the Waffle House on the beach because there's a little souvenir store over there. Well, we went over there, and we see my mom. And I hadn't seen her in a really long time, like 9 or 10 months. And she was about 100 pounds, soaking wet. She was living out of this old car that she had. She was homeless. And she didn't even look like her. She looked dead. It was scary. We picked her up. My grandma dropped me off at the house and then took her straight to the Home of Grace in Van Cleve, Mississippi. She stayed there for 90 days. When she completed it, she looked like a whole different person. Like, she looked like she was full of life. She started, like, telling us about God, ministering to us. It was just awesome to see her. We still weren't allowed to hang out with her because of court and stuff. So by 11th grade year, she went off the deep end again. And she just kept going in and out of programs. So finally, while I was in high school, halfway through junior year, they were like, look, since you failed 6th grade, let's go ahead and bump you up to 12th grade, and you'll just finish this year out and graduate. And I was confused. I was like, how does that work? And they were like, well, really, we just want to get rid of you because you cause a lot of problems, and we just want to see you succeed. So I graduated with a 1.9 GPA. Not even supposed to be able to do that. 19 credits, high school credits. And I graduated. I walked across stage, and my mom was there. My dad's brother and his family were there. Just a bunch of people were there. And it was just awesome to see that. Well, that summer of graduation, I was getting very anxious because I was ready to move on from that stuff with my grandparents, the fighting and stuff. I was ready to move on from all that and better my life as an adult. Well, I guess God had different plans because I started like thinking about college. This lady came and told me about this college in Tennessee, and it was the first thing I had heard about college all year. So instantly I took it. I signed the thing. I turned 18, and then the day after I turned 18, I was in the car with my sisters and my grandparents. We were on the way to the hospital to see my mom. She had a really bad kidney infection because she has lupus. And by this time, she was sober. She was doing really good. She had her own house in Alabama and stuff. She just went to a hospital in Ocean Springs because that's where she's from, you know. And so we went over there to see her, and my step-grandpa, he wouldn't let my little sister go in the hospital room to see my mom. And I was very upset about it, but I didn't voice anything. Well, she was crying, and by this time we were done seeing my mom. We were going, and I had work that day. So we were going to go eat lunch, and they were going to drop me off at work. Well, my little sister's crying in the back seat, and he turns around and looks at her and says, "Shut up. You don't need to be crying about that." And I flashed out. I instantly told him to pull the car over. And I was like, "You don't talk to my sister like that. Like, it's uncalled for." And he was like, "Well, since you're 18 now, you think you're a big man or whatever, I can put my hands on you now." And I was like, "You can try to put your hands on me." And I hadn't done this in a really long time. But there was something about that day. It was just very triggering. Like, it took every bone in my body not to put my hands on him. And I jumped out of the truck. He pulled over on the side of the interstate, and I got out of the truck. And I grabbed my bag, and I was about to go, start walking to work. And he threw me to the ground, and he was, trying to choke me with my shirt, and he was screaming at me, trying to take my phone away from me, because they paid for my phone at the time. Well, I took my phone, and I chucked it in the woods, and I got up, and he kept trying to wrestle with me, so I pushed him down. Well, when I did, he pulled the, "Oh, I have a bad heart, you could have killed me" thing, and my grandma's screaming at me. My sisters are crying in the backseat, freaking out. Well, luckily my sister called my Aunt Angel. That's my mama's sister. So I ran across the interstate real quick and jumped the median and ran through the woods to get to Burger King in D'Iberville. Ocean Springs is over here about about a mile away from Burger King. So it would have took me a couple minutes to get there. And my Aunt Angel pulled up there, and she picked me up, and she called the police to let them know we were going back to my grandma's house to get my stuff. When I got there, all my stuff was on the side of the road. And the police officers were like, hey, do you want to press charges and stuff? I was like, no, I don't want anything to happen. I just want to get my stuff and get out of here, and we'll figure it out later. Well, my grandma calls me, and she's like, I'm canceling your bank account. I'm canceling your phone. Canceling the school. If you want to go there, you're going to have to sign up your own name. I'm not taking the loan or anything. And I was like, fine. So I took a loan out for myself. I started my own bank account. I started paying my own phone bill. I took all the money that I had saved up and put it into a savings account in my own name and just all this stuff. And I was living with my aunt for about a month, and then it was time to go to Nashville. Well, I didn't think I was going to miss home that much. So for the first 3 months, it was August, September, October, November. So the first 4 months was a breeze. I was doing everything I was supposed to be in school, making straight A's, everything was good. And then I had to move out of this one dorm room and move into another one. And the roommate that I had was very toxic. He liked to argue a lot. He liked to smoke weed in the room. And at this time, I wasn't into all that stuff. I was just trying to, live without that. I drank a little bit with my friends, but I hadn't drank or anything in college yet. And one day we decided we were going to, stop arguing, and we were just going to hang out. And then I started drinking. And from there, I didn't care about college anymore. I fell in love with alcohol. And it's very scary to say that, because I told myself, seeing all these people in my life get hurt by addiction, my whole family was destroyed because of addiction, and there I am with the bottle of alcohol in my hand every weekend in college, just drinking and not even paying attention in school. Just everything that I'd done before, just worse, because I had alcohol involved. And I didn't think I had a problem, though, because I used to tell everybody about God. I used to minister. I used to just preach to people, but I was still stuck in addiction. And I had a really awesome roommate. I had switched roommates, and he was trying to get me to stop drinking. His name was Jason. He was from East Tennessee, and he was an older guy. He was about 43. He was a really good role model for me in college. And he was trying to get me to stop drinking. We started going to church together. It was awesome. And then COVID hit. And I didn't have a place to go, but they wanted us out of the dorm rooms. Well, Jason left with a girl that he had been talking to. So I was stuck in the dorm room for about a month by myself. I had no money because I didn't get a job. I didn't have a car. So I was eating ramen noodles every day. And I was getting really fat, just eating nasty foods. And then I started drinking again. And finally, one day, a friend of mine, Tony, he knocked on my door. And he was like, hey, man, I'm going home. He lived in McMinnville. It's about an hour and a half out of Nashville towards Knoxville. And he was like, hey, come stay with me until COVID's over. Because we thought it was just going to breeze past, Well, I stayed with him from February till about May. I was with him for 3 months, and we started drinking, and we were smoking. I was watching him do drugs. He had his girlfriend in and out of the house all the time while his mom wasn't home. It was bad. And finally his mom came to me one day, and she was like, look, you got to either get a job and help me pay rent, or you got to go. And I was like, I'm not getting a job. So the first thing I thought of was call my uncle, my dad's brother. He was always there for me, and it was mostly because he felt bad for how my dad treated me, because he wasn't there very much. So my uncle would do anything for me, and I took advantage of that. I called him, and he bought a plane ticket out of Nashville to go to Biloxi, and it was like $300 for me to just go straight there. And he bought the plane ticket. I got on the plane. I went home. And then I started staying with my grandpa, and he was very sick, so that was bringing me down a lot. And then I started going back with my old friends that I was hanging out with, and it was just really bad. I was drinking, I was smoking, I was cutting up, going to parties, just doing a lot of stupid stuff. And the school called me one day. It was about September now. they called me and they're like, hey, we're opening the school back. And I was like, all right. I got another plane ticket. I went back to school. I stayed from September till I think the beginning of November. I left at the beginning of November, dropped out, and decided I was going to change my life because I was stuck in that place of leaving and going to school just because I didn't like where I was. I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for other people. It just wasn't God's will. You know, I was thinking that I was in control of my life. So throughout the beginning of November till about Thanksgiving, I was still on the verge of trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. But in the midst of that, I was still drinking and partying and going with friends and doing all this and that. My mom moved in at my grandpa's house with me. She started ministering to me. I started getting closer to God. And finally, Thanksgiving came. And Ryan, the guy I live with who owns the transition house, he was a really good friend of my mom through her recovery. And he has a ministry called Agape Life Gardens. Well, my phone had randomly sent a message on Thanksgiving. I didn't send it. It just sent. I know that sounds crazy, but that's really what happened. And it sent a message to him, and it said something like, "Yeah, I'll be there soon." But it was a message that I sent a long time ago that never went through. And he was like, "Ethan, are you okay?" And he called me. I wouldn't answer him. Finally, like the fifth call, I answered it, and I just started crying. Because I knew what was going on. I knew God had something for me. And he was like, your mom told me about what's going on. You know, you've been drinking, you've been doing this and that. He was like, how would you like to come stay in this transition home I have in Mobile? And I was like, man, I don't need your help. I don't need rehab. And I hung up on him. Not even 10 minutes later, I was praying, just bawling my eyes out, crying, because I knew that was a sign from God. And if I didn't take it, then I don't know where I'd be right now. I called him back instantly. I said, when can you pick me up? He said, when can you get your stuff packed? And he picked me up that Sunday. And since then, I haven't drank. I haven't smoked marijuana. I haven't partied. I don't even hang out with my old friends anymore. I'm not even in contact with them. I get to see my mom now. I get to see my dad, my sisters, all the people, all these relationships that I had destroyed or they had destroyed are being restored by God. All these different things that other people wouldn't see as blessings, but I see as blessings because I didn't have them when I was a kid. It's just being restored. And all glory is to God for that. I couldn't do this on my own. I tried for years to do this on my own, and I couldn't.
That to me that's what I've seen in you, is that you give all glory to him, because there is no way you could have done some of the things and withstood some of the things that you had to go through as a child. So we met through you came on to one of our recycling classes, actually group. So you're doing our electronic recycling. You're in a group of older guys. You're in a group with guys that have been in prison 15, 20 years. You've got guys that have been coming out that are living in homeless shelters, all this other addictions, things like that. What did you think like when you first came that first day?
I was thankful, but I was a little scared because these guys were way older than me. And I already know at my age, you're going to have a lot of people saying, well, you're just a boy. You're just a 19-year-old. Like, you know, you got some stuff to learn. And part of that's true. I do have some stuff to learn. But just because I'm 19 doesn't mean I don't know stuff. But that's also my pride trying to kick in sometimes. But, you know, that was my initial reaction was, I know that I need to be here. But it was scary because there was a lot of people here that.
So through that process, through the 90 days, the 3 months that you were working, what are some things that you took from it? What are some things you say God sent you here. Yeah. So why do you think he sent you here? What are some things that you could grab from that?
Work ethic is one. Showing up on time. Because I was bad about showing up on time. I was bad about getting out of bed. I'm a very lazy person. I still am lazy. I've come a long way from where I was before, though. I learned to clean up after myself. I know that sounds crazy, but I used to have all these manners. I used to have all this common sense, and when I went to college, all that went out the window. So I'm building it all back up now. I'm learning to be an adult. I'm learning how to take instruction without being upset about it, because I used to not be able to do that. There's been many times where you have told me something, to do something, and my first thought is, why is this man talking to me like that? But that's just how you are. And I have to realize that not only are you older than me and wiser than me, but you're also my boss. So I kind of have to listen to you if I want the job. But in that, I'm learning to respect people more, to listen more, talk less, because even if I know it, I probably don't know their way. And it's better to know 2 ways than 1 way. I've learned a lot of things like that. I get spiritual wisdom from these people. Just hearing how your life's been, how Brian's life's been, all these different people surrounding me, experiences that I've never had, I can listen to their stories and not live that out. And because as a kid, you're curious, you want to do all these different things, and then you hear what happened to them when they did all this. You're like, yeah, I'd rather not do that.
So do you think it'd be good for most 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old guys and ladies to be in something, around something like this?
I think so, yes. And the main reason is because it's faith-based. Mm-hmm. And because there's a lot of, the Spirit is here. The Holy Spirit is here every single day. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't know. But I do think that this would be really good for 18, 19-year-olds that have had a troubled past and want to learn how to be an adult and not just be that person who had to grow up so fast.
Yeah.
Like I did.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. You had to grow up fast, but you didn't have no one showing you how to grow up.
Exactly. I was just doing my own thing.
Yeah, you kind of were just learning what you thought was like being an adult,
right,
when you never had any role models, which I think is really cool now. Though I go back and look, and like you see your mom this weekend, you saw your grandparents this weekend, you saw your sister, your dad. All these things are coming together, even though you could. And what that speaks to me is that you could be real angry towards those people if you really wanted to be, and you'd have every right to be mad. Your mom kind of wasn't there, mm-hmm, but you've never come across as that kind of person, like someone that holds a grudge or someone that is going to not forgive. And that's what I talked about at the beginning. You're very loving and humble and trustworthy, and you're a forgiving person, and that gets you in trouble sometimes. And it looks to others like that's weak, but really, according to the Bible, that's strong.
Yeah.
That's stronger than someone that holds on to hurts and unforgiveness. And there's some people out there that have been through what you've been through, and they've been carrying anger towards their parents for their whole life. There's some 50, 60-year-olds that have been carrying that anger towards their family for not being there for them for their whole life.
Right.
And if you could speak to kids out there that maybe had a really bad life or had not really bad. Yours wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It wasn't like normal.
Yeah.
It was normal to you. So as we're finishing up, I want you to say, like, what is one thing that you would just love to tell that kid that is maybe having to take care of his, 2-year-old sister when he's only 8 years old or 10 years old? And what would you tell them?
You're not a statistic. A lot of people will tell you because you grew up without a mom or you grew up without a dad or you grew up in addiction that you were going to be that person. You don't have to be that person. And yeah, that's just it right there. You can learn to hate the people who treated you like that, or you can learn to love them because they needed that love too. And that's one of the biggest things that I had to learn was about forgiveness. How could I have unforgiveness for my mom and my dad when God forgave me for something that I haven't even done yet? He forgave every single person for the things that has been done and is to come. And I'm still upset at something that somebody else did. You can't hold that. You can't hold that in, because not only is that hurting that person, but that's hurting you too. You're holding on to things that you can't change. So why hold it in, you know?
That is that's why I love you. Because you're mature for your age. I mean, you are mature, even though some people, you always they tell me to be a kid, and then I act like a kid, and then they want me to be an adult.
Yeah.
I don't know which one to do, but I think you can be both, man. Be a kid, enjoy life, and you have you're still learning how to be an adult because you've never had anybody really show you.
Right.
But I think it's really cool that you say that, because you're right. What happened to you is not you. That's what happened to you. It's not who you are. And that's what we try to talk about. And to see you go through those things. And I know at the beginning, when you first started here, man, you couldn't work with certain people because they reminded you there's triggers, but I've seen you work through those things and it doesn't bother you as much. We have to understand the people around us, what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, just like you said, your mom didn't have nobody maybe to show her that love or how to be a mom or how to do those things. And so you can't really hold her accountable. Do we go all the way back? No, we just trust that, you know, from this moment on, you're not going to be that person. You're not going to do that to your family or whatever. So I count it an honor to have got to know you over the last few months. I can't wait to see what God does through your life. And I give you a hard time. And it's because I care about you that I try to tell you the truth as much as I can, sometimes to a fault. And I'm not always the greatest deliverer of that truth. And it can come across as harsh, but I think you know that I do care about you.
Yeah.
And I think as we go, as I'm leaving here, one of the things that stands out to me is that you are going to change the world, man. You are. You're going to change the world, because I see no matter who you're around, whether it's guys that have been in prison 20 years, whether it's guys that have been in addiction, they're homeless, whatever, you're still just Ethan, man. You're just you, man. You don't change for them. You don't change your personality. You don't try to be hard. You don't try to be something you're not.
Right.
And that's going to go a long ways. And I think that you need to keep doing that. Just keep being Ethan. Don't worry about what they say you should be or what someone else, because you said when you're going to school that you were doing it for someone else.
Yeah.
You got to figure out where, we're going to figure out where God wants you. You kind of know that, and we're working towards that. And I think it's just an honor that you're here. So I appreciate you coming on with me. I know everybody's going to be blessed by it. And so I hope you enjoyed my talk with Ethan. I hope you understand that what we do here at Ransom Ministries is we try to give people their lives back, but mostly we just give them the tools to operate in what God had already given them. He's already given them their lives. He's already showed them He's already made them with a purpose. We just are tools God gets to use to help them do that. And I'm thankful that I get to see that in Ethan and other people that come through our program. So again, hopefully you enjoyed my talk with Ethan. I hope that you'll subscribe to our podcast. You'll like us. You'll share it. Go to our website, ransomministries.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but also just kind of check out what we're doing and tune into it. Every Wednesday, we have a new story, a new podcast that downloads. So look for us next week. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. With every star